Good morning, good afternoon. My name's Jennifer Goldsack. I'm the CEO here at the Digital Medicine Society, or DiMe. I'm delighted to be joined by my colleague, Doug Mirsky. Doug, let me kick it to you to do a quick introduction before we go ahead, orient everyone, and dive in.
Good morning, afternoon, and evening to everybody joining us from around the world. Very nice to meet you all. Doug Mirsky. I oversee the DiMe Seal for us, the topic of today's conversation. Looking forward to sharing more.
Fantastic. And we are very excited you're here. We are thrilled that we have been able to launch the DiMe Seal. We have ambitious goals for how this will support you as an adopter. If we can just go, let's start with some housekeeping, and then I'm going to go ahead and give a couple of remarks just about the purpose of the session today. So first of all, just so you're aware, today's session is being recorded. The good news there is it will be available to you and your colleagues afterwards, both on the DiMe website. We will also email out the recording in case you want to share with any of your colleagues. As I'll mention in just a moment, the goal of today's session is to be very participatory. The goal of today's session is for each of you to walk away with a deep understanding of the value that the DiMe Seal offers you and your colleagues as you seek to sort of reduce the burden of decision making as it relates to digital health software products. So as we sort of go through the discussion, and it really will be a discussion between Doug and myself to start with, we're going to invite you to raise your hand at any time. We'll call on you, sort of give you the mic. You can join the discussion. We'll also be monitoring the chat as we go. In addition, we are going to have dedicated time at the end for us to have an open discussion. So let's pop to the next slide, but I'm not going to dive straight into who we are at DiMe. Rather, I'm going to make this about you for just a hot second here. What I want to do is really do a level set of our goals for today's session. Whenever anyone takes time out of their day to come and attend a meeting like this, we take very seriously our responsibility to meet your needs. So we may or may not need the full hour, but throughout the course of today's session, Doug and I are first going to introduce the Digital Medicine Society, or DiMe. We're also going to talk a little bit about our goals for the DiMe Seal. And then we're going to dive in and really talk about the different products that it relates to, the value that's conferred upon relying upon the DiMe Seal for your decision making, and also how you can get involved. Please do rely on the questions. Please do rely on the chat. We are excited to have a discussion and really make sure that you have a deep understanding of the DiMe Seal, especially as it's such a new program. So excited to welcome you today. So for folks who might not yet be familiar with the Digital Medicine Society, or DiMe, we are a global nonprofit. Our mission is to advance the safe, effective, and equitable use of digital approaches to redefine healthcare and improve lives. I think it's really important to talk about our stance on technology. And the most important piece here is that we are tech enthusiasts, not tech determinists. So our role here at DiMe is not to try and shoehorn digital technologies into every nook and cranny of sort of healthcare and say, gosh, haven't we been clever? Haven't we been successful? But rather we think an awful lot about how are we positioning the field to solve some of the most pressing and persistent challenges in healthcare using the suite of powerful new tools in the toolbox. And the way we approach it, if we go to the next slide, is we do sit at the intersection of clinical innovation and technology. And if we go to the next slide, you can look a little bit at how we sort of work in the market. So first of all, we think about sort of bringing together the leaders in the field to actually identify what the most pressing challenges are. Then together we lead through building solutions that are action oriented. We also then provide education, advisory support to make sure that everyone has what they need. And the DiMe Seal fits into this rubric in a powerful way. Doug will speak more about this, but when we think about the impetus for actually building the DiMe Seal, it was in response to insights and input from our community, from those of you who are looking to leverage digital solutions to improve the way that you care for people in order to make better investment decisions, in order to accelerate the pace of medical product development. You told us that the burden on you was far too high in those decisioning, and that's why we built the DiMe Seal. simultaneously, as we built this solution, we did it collaboratively with hundreds of individuals from our community. Again, this is something Doug is going to get more into. But we really are proud of the DiMe seal because it's been responsive to your needs. And if we go to the next slide, we can look at the DiMe community and we can celebrate the people that we have at the table, the organizational leaders that we have at the table in order to advance our mission, our work, and in this case, for the purposes of our discussion today, the DiMe seal. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to my colleague, Doug, to sort of really walk us through the vision and application and the value to you of the DiMe seal. And we are going to try and sort of have this as a bit more of a conversation. So I'll chip in occasionally, as will sort of our responsibility be to you, looking to see if you have any questions or comments in the chat or looking for raised hands. So with that, Doug, let me kick it to you.
Great, thanks, Jen. A couple of, well, really maybe one comment. Before I get into it, we will have a few poll questions for you all here throughout. So keep an eye on that. There will be a QR code, but we definitely want your feedback as we go along here. A little bit of research on our part, but hopefully also a good way to engage with you folks as well on the call. The DiMe seal. So Jen walked you through DiMe and a bit about what we are. Over the course of the 5-ish or so years that we've been in existence, we've really been forming what this is, what the DiMe seal is. We've been working on countless research projects, investigating digital measures across a variety of areas, establishing exceptional educational offerings in the digital health space, convening incredible communities to move this whole field forward. Over the course of doing all of that work, though, there really became this gap that we became aware of in terms of actually identifying and integrating the digital health products themselves into those folks who are going to need them and going to be using them. So moving on to the next slide, what we over the course of those 5 years, what we heard, what we saw were just countless digital health products, right? This is one number. You can go find the sources for these. We have them on the bottom, but 350,000 plus digital health software products exist out there in the market. There's 30,000 or so, and we've seen numbers bigger than that, but we're on the conservative side here of the developers who are making those products. And then there's 6,000 or so just health systems, not looking at even the payers or the individual or smaller provider practices, and obviously the patients as well. But that becomes a massive multiplication problem in terms of how do you navigate through this incredibly noisy space of a multitude of digital health products and get them in the right hands at the right time? How do you make sure that you've got the best ones, the ones that were built responsibly, the ones that are of the level of quality and trust rising to the top, so that the folks, the adopters, the buyers can have that level of confidence to know that they're doing what they're doing, so that they know that what they're doing is going to be the right thing for them. And so what we did was going to the market here, listening to this problem, we sort of started to talk to a number of folks here. And before we shift to the next slide, there's partitioning here of that 6,000 too. It's not as though all of these health systems are the same. You've got health systems that have massive digital health teams that spend a lot of time and effort and can spend a lot of time and effort on assessing digital health products. And then you've got smaller hospitals and health systems that don't have digital health teams, don't have a chief digital officer or a digital strategy officer. And it's really that scenario where, for example, the head of GI sees something on 60 Minutes. I'm totally making this all up, but it's a true example where the head of GI sends something over that they saw on 60 Minutes to the CIO and says, hey, can we get this? And that CIO's got to figure out, well, what am I going to do here? So it's the majority of those 6,000, that's that latter category that is not as well resourced. And it's for those that we think there is an opportunity here with the DiMe seal in particular, that we think is valuable for all, but it's really for those who could benefit from us doing a lot of the legwork here to identify what good looks like, what trustworthy looks like, so they can go and focus on the ROI. So we've got a couple of poll questions here that we want to go into, and we'll start with this first one. So for those adopters out there, for those buyers of products, how much time does it take your entity to review a digital health software product on average? And I'll wait here just for a few seconds as you all get to fill out the poll. And Lynn, whenever you feel it's time to pull that. So this is interesting. So it's a bit spread across the board with under 50 hours as well as over 150 hours. Interesting to see the spread. What I'll share from the research we've done so far is, at least specifically with health systems, the vast majority of it is between 75 to 150 hours. The vast majority for each digital health software product we're seeing health systems spend that much time per product, which is a mind-blowing number, frankly, in terms of how much resource needs to go into doing this well. So quickly, let's go into the next slide with one more quick follow poll question. How many digital health software products does your organization review in a year? And you can probably guess we're starting a multiplication product equation here as well. So is it under 5 all the way through to over 20? So how many digital health software products does your entity review in a year? Right, interesting. So under 5 to 10. And again, I think it really depends on the group that's seeing this. We've seen it goes anywhere from usually it's 10 to over 20. And in fact, the majority of health systems that we've interacted with, but to be fair, we're just starting on this, has been over 20. And you can start to figure out what's this multiplication problem, right? If we're seeing 75 to 150 hours to review a single product, and we're now seeing 10 products per year for an adopter, for a health system to actually spend this amount of time on it, is quite a large resource intensive effort. And then you multiply that by 6,000 health systems across or hospitals across just the US alone. We're really talking hundreds of thousands of hours are being spent on reviewing digital health software products just in a year. So it's quite a large resource problem. And what it ends up doing, which is what is the reason for dying to invest our time and effort here, is there is a lot of friction in adopting the digital health software products. And that's really where the DiMe seal comes in here. So we do what we do. If you can go to the next slide, Lynn. And we drew on what it is that DiMe does well, right? We conducted exhaustive research. We reviewed thousands of different scientific articles, collectively hundreds of guidelines, standards, certifications, and we interviewed tons of industry experts, and we found no single tool exists to establish that a product is built against these best practices. And so we convened then experts. That's our superpower. And moving on to the next slide, those experts became our governance committee. They represent all of the right folks across this space, from health systems, payers, patients, investors, providers, developers. These are the folks that became the governance committee that we worked with to actually shape and define what should this DiMe seal be to address this problem that we've identified. And going into the market, then one of the first things we did was, going to the next slide, looked at what exists already. And so we are not talking about the healthcare services at the top, the NCQAs, the Joint Commissions, the URACs. Similarly, what we're trying to work on here with the DiMe seal is not about the ROI. It's not about, is it cost effective? We're identifying what is that software, what are the attributes of software that that need to be in place for it to be trustworthy and of a high quality, right? What's that baseline level of trust and quality in order for adopters, again, those health system providers, payers, to be able to have a level of confidence to more quickly move forward and adopt those products. And we landed on this space here in that software, so that what the DiMe seal is looking at is really just the software itself. We'll leave some of this other work to those other players in the space, because we think this is the part that is causing as much, if not more, friction to the adoption as anywhere else. Moving on.
Doug, I'm going to jump in for a second because we've got a really good question from Regina, and I think now might be a good point to dive into it. So if we go back to, actually this slide's fine. Regina was asking at what point in the development process should a digital health software manufacturer reach out to be evaluated? And I certainly have some thoughts on this, but do you know, sort of looking at where the DiMe seal fits into the landscape, let's talk about this.
So I've heard a few different things. I have my answers, but I want to share with you what I've heard from the developers I've spoken with, as well as then the adopters. There are those who came to us just recently. We were at Health, spoke to a number of very early stage developers who are building their products right now. And they came to us and said, you know, this is great because I want to build the evaluation framework into my product so that when it launches, it's built right. And that struck us as really making a ton of sense, and for them as well. So I love the idea of those folks who are in the building phase of a product, pre-launch even, looking to the evaluation framework to ensure that once it launches, it has launched in the right way. That's one cohort. The other cohort are for those who are already on the market, and in particular, they have valued and they have prioritized being a responsible product developer, but at the same time, there's a high level of competition in their space. They don't necessarily feel that they're being positioned to stand out off of the good work that they've done there. And so for them, the DiMe seal is a differentiator for them to apply the evaluation framework to what they've already built, to say, hey, look, we really mean this stuff. This is important to us. We're going to hit that level of baseline quality and trust so that the adopters can quickly get to the meat of it, which is, well, does it fit our problem? And so those two groups in particular really struck us as strong adopters here. Jen, would you add on to that?
I think those are two excellent cohorts. And so sort of Regina, in response to your question, I think it's very fit for purpose for what your goals are, what you're trying to achieve, where your product is. It can, the seal can do a lot of work for you. I think there was one other example that's really stood out to me, Doug, which is, you know, we've had questions like, obviously we have Shay Mandel from Advamed, who sits on our governance committee, and we've done a lot of work with very traditional medical device companies, as well as sort of innovative startups, perhaps with earlier stage products. And the piece for them that is appealing is the usability evaluation. So there's no doubt that a traditional medical device company, for example, when it comes to traditional medical devices, is going to be known and have a reputation in the market for world-class evidence, for excellent privacy and security. But we're in a sort of new world these days, and you don't have to own the MRI machine to be able to build a high quality digital health software product that might help with evaluating the readings, right? Clinical decision support, interpretation, note taking, so on and so forth. And one of the things that we've seen as it relates to digital health software products is very low switching costs indeed. So even for more mature, more established digital health software product developers, they recognize the value in this sort of unifying tool that's able to differentiate them in the market as being a very complete solution that can both deliver evidence to support the claim, that can sort of show up with the appropriate privacy and security so there's no risk of harm to either the system or the patient, and that the usability, the ability to integrate into the workflow and provide a terrific user experience is also contemplated and recognized by the DiMe seal. So Regina, there is no wrong time, right? If we're thinking early stage, this can help make sure that you're building in the right direction. If you are on a pathway where you are looking at pursuing regulatory sort of clearance, but you aren't there yet, this can be a nice step on your product development roadmap that might differentiate you for early sort of funding. If you're a product that's being built ex-US and you want to hit the US market as part of your business strategy, that's another great example. And if you're an established product who's really thinking, gosh, this market is increasingly crowded and switching costs are very low, even then it's still a very, very important mark, because the decision has to be made to maintain your contract over time. Doug, I'm also looking at Sudakar's question here, and I think especially because of how we lay out the different products in the third-party certification landscape, this warrants discussion now. So Sudakar, you had a good question about whether we evaluate clinical AI aspects as well. So as you can see from what's on the screen, AI is certainly in scope. Doug, do you want to talk about sort of depth versus breadth when it comes to particularly some of these more complex products?
Well, so I'll answer it this way, and I welcome, Jen, your filter on top of this. We built an evaluation framework, and it's actually in a couple of slides from now, we'll show it to you. And this is the benefit of us being a not-for-profit. We've made the evaluation framework public, so please go and take a look at it and interrogate it. The framework doesn't change. It incorporates software products that are built with AI, as well as just general SaaS. So it looks at all of those across 3 different domains. And actually, maybe we go to the next slide in answering this question. The 3 domains that we are really covering, that we identify, that we work with the governance committee to figure out what should we be doing with the DiMe seal, covers evidence generation, privacy, security, and usability. Equity is not a discrete domain, but it is woven throughout this whole thing because it should be. It shouldn't be a discrete domain. It should be part of everything that we do. So we built it with these 3 discrete domains, but the framework itself covers all of SaaS and all of AI. So if you have an AI product, it applies to that as well. It's going to go through the same process, whether you have AI or not, to attest to the level of evidence that is supporting that work. And so actually, maybe if we quickly go to the next slide, then I'll stop and I'll let Jen jump back in here. These are just the evaluating attestations and the criteria and the domains, right? So I mentioned the 3 domains of evidence, privacy, security, usability. These are the 23 criteria within each of those domains that the evaluation framework covers. And then you can just see in the parens the numbers of actual attestations and steps you need to go through to share the evidence necessary to support that criteria in that domain. So it covers AI in that way just as well as it would cover SaaS, but it is a bit of choose your own adventure is the wrong word here, but the framework itself, while the framework is rigid, your product will determine how you travel through that framework. And so if you're, for example, a patient-facing product, that will require you to answer different parts of this this framework that we built. If you have, if you are 510K approved already, that graduates you out of other parts of this. So being an AI product will potentially adjust the way you travel through the framework, but the framework itself stays the same. And Jen, please pile on.
Yeah, I think you've given a really good description there, Doug. And Sudhakar, I think the other thing that you'll see if we just pop back to the slide, the landscape slide, is, you know, we are contemplating all of the other great work that's out there. So, for example, I actually sit on the board of Chai. So we're thinking a lot about how are they thinking about their accreditation labs and a really deep dive on the trustworthiness of the model and the sort of clinical quality of the model. And how is that different? And how is that augmented by the DiMe seal? We are not going that deep on model evaluation. However, we are seeking baseline evidence that you have sort of data to support any claims that you are making. And we are specifically thinking about the other components as well. So, you know, it's not just how does your model perform, but does it dock into a clinical workflow if that's where you want it to land? How have you thought about equity? How have you thought about accessibility of your product? How have you thought about the privacy and security measures, both as it relates to the data you've used to train the model and test it, and how you're sourcing data in order to run your model during sort of care delivery or based off a sort of wellness product? So this is very, very intentionally designed to be more than the sum of the parts. As a standalone measure, the DiMe seal is not going to say you have a validated model, but it is going to say that you have evidence to support the claims that you are making, and you are a very complete, trustworthy, high quality solution. So hopefully that's useful.
And then actually, Jen, you were just
Yeah, go
touching on
ahead.
the next question from Mohammed about what DiMe seal adds for those who got FDA approval. And I think you were already touching on it a little bit, which is A, that's great, and we have no intention of being duplicative here. Your if you have your 510(k) approval, that graduates you out of most of the evidence attestations that the framework requires of all of those who are going through the evaluation process. But at the same time, there are usability aspects to this and privacy and security aspects to this that may not be covered. And so the framework, again, is rigid, but your path through it adjusts. So we have built into this evaluation process your ability to upload, your 510(k), your high trust, your SOC 2, whatever other certifications, guidelines, awards that you've already achieved with your product, so that it adjusts how you go through the framework. And then oftentimes then, if you have your 510(k), it's just going to take you less time to actually go through the DiMe seal process, as it should, because you've already demonstrated your level of proficiency to that certification, to that award.
Yeah, and Doug, I'm just going to keep piling on, and I think Mohammed's question is really good. So let's actually take an example here, Mohammed. So, we can think about some kind of clinical decision support system that is cleared, by FDA, and we know that there are certainly hundreds of those that are in the mix right now, and many more coming through. What FDA will tell you is that there's, that product is safe, that it's effective, and it has good device security. It's not going to tell you anything about how it fits into a clinician's workflow. Does it actually integrate with an EHR if it is supposed to be used by a clinician as part of routine care? What's the interface look like? Is this going to be the kind of thing that gets your sort of radiology techs or your nurses sort of absolutely ready to sort of quit, which we cannot afford right now? Or is it a good experience for them? If it's some kind of patient-facing product, right? So we can imagine some kind of 510(k) cleared digital therapeutic, for example, right? FDA is going to tell you about the safety, about the effectiveness, and it's going to tell you about the security, but it's not going to tell you whether every sort of element of the product, from the language in the app itself all the way through to the privacy policy terms of service, are written at an 8th grade reading level, so that the experience of every single patient using it is equitable, and so and to make sure that every single user understands sort of deeply the risks and the benefits of the product. It's not going to tell you about whether someone who has sort of vision difficulties, for example, can interact with the product. These are the differences that we bring to the market, even for cleared products, when we think about the DiMe seal. Because we all know, and this starts to get to Greg's question actually, we all know that we can have a safe and effective product and it can be absolutely useless if it doesn't work in practice. And so the DiMe sort of seal will communicate to end users and buyers that this is not just a trustworthy product, but a high quality product that's suitable for every person that you're looking to deploy it with. So that's the difference there, Mohammed, and hopefully that's a useful distinction.
Yeah, and I'll jump in just directly to Greg's question here as well. In terms of implementation and integration, makes a ton of sense. We want to make sure with the DiMe seal of what we're doing here, and some of the criteria covers implementation and integration. We definitely built that in here, and actually, I'm going to add in. So I just put the link into the actual evaluation criteria. You guys don't take a look at it now unless you have glasses and maybe a scotch with you, but take your time and take a read through it. We have implementation built in here, but it's not going to be at the level, Greg, of did we actually watch the integration and the workflow testing for this? It's going to be more along the lines of that the developer actually in building their product sought out diverse stakeholders to see how they would be potentially affected by the use of the product with the implementation. So we've built into this framework implementation types of attestations and criteria. It is in there, but that almost gets to a question, I think, Greg, which leans a little bit closer to it's not ROI, but it's cost effectiveness as well. It is going to still be the work that the adopters need to do to make sure this fits for them. And what we've built with the DiMe seal is to try and clear the path so that the adopters can get to the point of not paying as close attention to privacy and security and usability, because we're clearing that path for them. They can then focus their time and attention on, well, does this solve the problem that I have? And part of solving the problem that I have could be, what is the makeup of my staff? What are the workflows that we like and that we have in place? And it gets to a bit more of a specific instance with each and every health system that they still need to clear on their own.
Yeah, and Doug, you answered that really nicely. And Greg, I think that first of all, your experience is spot on and jives with what we believe is sort of best practice. We are not looking at process. We are looking at sort of benchmarks in performance, documentation, so on and so forth. But I do believe that the benchmarks that we have really do support the notion that this was built with the end user in mind, whether that's a patient or whether that's a clinician or whether it's both at every step of the way. And so we are absolutely sorting for that. And we are including FDA breakthrough device sort of status. Keep in mind that the DiMe seal is 1 year, so it does need to be re-upped after those periods of time. We want to make sure that we're looking at the best data. So that allows us to take something like breakthrough status. And over time, obviously, you know, full clearance, full market access is needed, and we'll be looking for that into the future. There's a really good question here, Doug, about do we have a playbook for innovators to follow? So a couple of things, guys, that we're working on. And if whoever popped that question in the Q&A feels comfortable raising their hand, I might actually unmute you so we can have a bit more of a conversation about this. There's some educational content embedded throughout the web pages as you go through. We are creating additional detail. We've actually got a manuscript under review, moving as always at the speed of science, that is reporting on all of the different benchmarks. Terrific, Greg. I'm actually, if you're somewhere where you can chat, I'm going to unmute you on our, I'm not sure if I can. Lynn, I might ask you to see, there you go, your magic. Greg, you should be able to unmute yourself if you'd like to.
Sure.
Because I'm curious about what it is that you'd need. DiMe obviously has the playbook. We were thinking about didactic sessions, more like something we have through our Digital Medicine Academy. Tell us what you would use, because that will help us know what to build.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we've got you. Hi, Greg.
Thank you. Hi. Really appreciate your engagement on this. Yeah, the purpose I was thinking is I've done a lot of work with early stage innovators, and you know, I think your metrics here are all spot on in terms of evaluating where they go. It's just that I think if you're getting started at the very beginning, there are probably a set of activities and milestones that you want to prepare for executing. I had the pleasure of working with a number of physicians at Mount Sinai getting my master's, and it was very clear to me as a digital guy, not a clinician, that you've got to engage with those people in your area of specialty, if it's diabetes or chronic care, whatever. And you've got to have a guidance around what it is in that playbook, the steps and all the milestones you need to cover in order for you to achieve both evidence capture as well as some kind of an ROI and a pricing value to creation kind of a thing. So I'm just thinking out loud a bit in terms of getting a roadmap. And if DiMe is able to provide that roadmap with best practices, or here's what you do at this stage, and then here's what you look for later, breakthrough status might come in much later than earlier because you've got to do a lot of other things first, right? So the concept of a sequence might be important for people to understand. Does that make sense?
It does, Greg. I like your thinking a lot, and I'm thinking about our work on US regulatory pathways, international regulatory pathways, and I think there's probably an opportunity, Doug, for us to think about how we triangulate across a couple of different DiMe resources to give people these insights. Greg, one of the other things that I think that our community has really encouraged us to do, and we've seen enormous value, is to actually have, instead of here's a very generic sort of prescriptive roadmap, here are some case examples. And I think as we increasingly get developers that receive the DiMe seal, that may be a call to action first to celebrate their sort of leadership in the space, the fact that they've been awarded a seal through sort of visibility, but also maybe do some deep dive work with them and say, would you be willing to tell us when some of these decisions that you made in your product development roadmap happened that actually positioned you to be so successful? And I think that could be a lot more compelling, a lot more interesting, and it returns value to folks who have actually taken the time to differentiate themselves through the seal.
Yeah, I love that idea. I think that's great. It's funny. It reminds me a little bit of when I was at Mount Sinai. They would have these grand rounds for clinicians, and it was always about evaluating standards of care and improving standards of care. If what you're trying to do with DiMe and the seal is improving the standard of practice for an innovator, and that's kind of a parallel thing, Yeah.
Lots of opportunity. This is tremendous, Greg. Thank you so much for that feedback. Sure. And it's a nice, Mohammed, you're sort of thinking about applications that are sort of more closely related to life sciences. And then I actually think more importantly, drugs in the post market, thinking about what happens when these products are out with sort of supporting or interacting with molecules. And we absolutely engaged with the pharmacy or the pharmacist community. We work very closely in particular with Risa Vantakara, who's at digital.health, but also very active within the APHA, who really helped us think about the sort of the needs of the pharmacist, the role of the pharmacist. And I definitely think this is, if you have suggestions about how we can better communicate to our pharmacist colleagues that the DiMe seal can be something that supports them. If, for example, they're being asked questions around, hey, is this sort of companion wellness app going to help me with medication adherence or whatever that looks like, they should be looking for the DiMe seal in order to help them make recommendations to the patients who are sort of coming to them for trusted advice.
And I think, Jen, you've actually led into Mohammed's question there in the Q&A to a degree.
That was intentional. Terrific. And Doug, anything else to add there before we dive back in to some of our content?
That's good. And Lynn, if you could jump to what we have internally as slide 20. Great, thank you. So we've been talking around this slide, but I just want to make sure that that there's a clear understanding of where does the DiMe seal fit? Who is it for? And I think this slide does a really nice job. It is software that is built for the general purpose computing platform. It is software products that are standalone, though at the same time, we've been asked this a number of times. It's not for hardware, but in as much as there's software that goes with the hardware, yeah, that software is fine. And it is used for managing, maintaining, or improving health. We've heard about some questions of, can it be used for adjacent areas? And we're always open to thinking creatively there, but really the intent here is for the managing, maintaining, improving health. And to give you some examples, really the spectrum is on the right side of that, from patient-facing apps like if you've got a Fitbit app or some form of a wellness app, through to the clinician-facing side, you know, the ambient scribes that are in the room taking notes for the clinician themselves. And then the mashup of the two in the middle, where things like RPM, where it is the clinician and the patient in tandem engaging with the software. It really is a pretty all-encompassing framework with respect to the software that's being built. And then the next slide. So how does this all pull together? How does it work? So the developers actually would be going into a platform that we built. You can go to it. I think it's already been put into the chat. We'll show you links, and we'll send around this deck as well to those who are interested after the fact. But the developers will go into the DiMe seal platform. They will submit their digital product against the evaluation framework. That then gets ingested by us. We have a level of automation in the background. We also have an individual who we don't let out of a room, so that they will actually look at all of the information that's submitted, and we assess the information submitted against the criteria we have. What's particularly unique, and I think we're proud about here, is we've developed this from our perspective as a mission-driven organization. So we are not trying to reject anybody. I don't think the word rejection is a thing that we have any interest in. Our goal here is to make all boats rise with the tide with the DiMe seals. So what we've seen is about a third of the products that actually go through the DiMe seal evaluation process require revision, which is fantastic, because that means that we're able to provide the education for those folks. Where did they miss? Why did they miss? So that they can go and revise what it is about their product that needs revision. You know, whether it is a terms of service, if it's a patient-facing product that's written at a 16th grade level, but it really should be an 8th grade level. Great. That's education for that product developer to go and revise their product, make it achieve that level of baseline quality and trustworthiness, and it makes it better for the patient. Ultimately, it makes it better for the health systems, the payers, the providers, everybody. But what we're doing with this process then, with those revisions, is going to be increasing the level of quality and trust in all of the products that go through here, which we're particularly proud about, and is really the point of what we're doing here as well. So it meets the criteria, it's awarded a seal, there is an annual review cycle so that we can ensure that in as much as the framework itself is going to be malleable to a degree on an annual basis, to make sure we don't fall behind with the framework, that it stays up to date in terms of what's relevant and what's important, that those products then have the opportunity to renew through that annual cycle to get then into the hands of the providers and the patients. That's how it works. So if you go to the next slide really quickly, we have then built a platform. Happy to follow up with any of the folks on the call here after the fact if there's an interest in seeing the platform itself. The platform, it goes through these things that we said. There are attestations and criteria against evidence, against privacy and security, and against usability, and it shows you in the platform how to actually submit what you need for each of those different criteria. So we have the developer platform there on the left side of it. predominantly self-attestation workflow. There are some where it is trust but verify. If you say you have this, still submit that so that we can take a look and make sure. And then I already mentioned the yearly renewal. And then on the right side for the adopters on the call here, we've already put together a product catalog. But you'll see later on, we are also actually working with 3 great partners who are embedding the DiMe seal into their platforms. So as you look through their platforms, you can identify and preferentially sort those products that are DiMe seal awarded. So that product catalog will exist for the adopters as well. Moving on. So this really summarizes what we're going for here. We put this together to ensure that when these products get in front of adopters, of buyers, that there is that level of quality and trust that they can rely upon to speed up their process in identifying those products that will take them less time because they know they are built to that level of baseline quality and trust. It enhances the patient experience because those products that are built through to the level of quality and trust of a DiMe seal product, take the patient and keep the patient in mind as they have built what they have built, right? I already mentioned just the simple example of the terms of service, but that concept of equity, that concept of patient centricity is core to what we've built here as well with the DiMe seal. And then optimizing your investment so that you can, you as adopters can have that confidence to know that you're going to save your time and your resource being human capital, but cost as well, so that you're bringing into your health system, to your payer space, to your practice, those products that are going to be returning to you what you hope they will from the software side, right? Again, the ROI is going to be a calculation you all need to make for yourselves. When we go, thank you, this one, super important here. So we launched this last week. Very excited to be able to do it. Excited to be able to share more with you all here today. Been honored to see a number of products already go through this platform and be awarded the seal, more going through and being awarded this every day. We're also, as I mentioned earlier, excited to work with a handful of platform partners who've been great and have been trying to work with their platforms to preferentially identify DiMe seal awarded products. So you've got digital.health, Galen Growth's Health Tech Alpha, and then TherapX's App Guide. These are great resources for product developers as well as for the adopters to be able to go into their platforms, learn more about each of those products beyond what we're just putting out there in our own catalog as well. Before I wrap, Jen, are there other questions or other comments here to fold in?
I'm just looking at Mohammed's question here. So with the adaptive AI algorithms, you know, surprise, we haven't figured out what the rest of the regulatory world have not fully been able to, although I really would love to be able to celebrate that. Our approach, Mohammed, is that we make very clear in the terms of service as folks sort of submit their product for evaluation, that if there is substantial change to performance, and we sort of define that folks are expected to come back and sort of share with us that their products are still meeting the sort of evidentiary and security standards, because we know those are the 2 things that will often change with an adaptive AI algorithm. So there are benchmarks and moments where we do expect that of our sort of partners who are pursuing a DiMe seal. Fantastic.
Yeah. So ways to get involved. For those who are adopters on the line here, we would, there are two things. One is we have an open letter here. We think, as I had mentioned several times, this is a mission-driven effort for us. We think this is an important problem to solve. We invite you to read and review the open letter that we put out there that focuses on this problem, the problem of needing a way to identify quality, trustworthy digital health software products so that the adoption of digital health can happen faster and with greater confidence. That's a massive problem. If you go back to that earlier multiplication problem of 350,000 or so apps, products that exist out there, 30,000 developers, and 6,000 or so hospital health systems. The only way to speed that up is to weave into this whole market that level of quality and trust, which is what we're trying to accomplish with the DiMe seal. So review the open letter. If you're comfortable signing it from an adopter's perspective, please do so. And again, we'll send around this slide deck so that you're able to click on these links. And then for those adopters, request an adopter kit. We want to be, the thing that I've seen that has been most effective so far was, I was at Health last week, and there was an adopter at the front of the room who, in response to a question of how do I engage with you from a developer, his immediate response was, go get a DiMe seal. That's the way this is going to work. That's the way this is going to affect change. So come to us, let us know if you're interested in working with us to get to that level of adoption at your entity, at your institution, and we're happy to work with you on that. And then lastly, for those developers that are on the line here, please, by all means, read more about the DiMe seal and start the process. It is straightforward. I'll share for those developers on the line, what we've seen from those who have gone through it is over the course of 2 to 3 days or so, you'll spend about 2 to 3 hours in terms of the actual evaluation submission. So that's the time commitment that you should be looking to spend here. It is pretty straightforward. We encourage you to submit and let us know if you have any questions along the way. Any final thoughts from you, Jen?
If I could learn how to work a mute button, yes, just a few. So first of all, I think this is exactly right. We clearly have some very talented and sort of thoughtful developers as well as some adopters on the line. Please do get involved. The pathway to success here is by getting the full community behind this. So Sudhakar, I'll make sure that you get access to the adopter kit. If you can't click it there, we'll make sure it comes with a sort of follow-up email, which we will be sending out. And then just to answer the question here about sort of how we monitoring impact on innovation, so on and so forth. One of the things that we're going to be starting immediately that I think is going to be quite interesting is actually benchmarking those products that don't get awarded the seal on the first go. So what do I mean by that? So first of all, our goal here is not to name and shame anyone. If a company or a product is struggling to be awarded the DiMe seal, our team actually works with you to say, look, what do we have to do to get there? You know, some coaching around those sort of technical elements, so on and so forth. But we will be forming a dashboard of those products all at the aggregate level, but to really give some signals to the market about where are we seeing difficulties, like where are areas where we might be able to spend a little bit more time and intentionality upfront in the product development lifecycle in order to meet these sort of benchmarks, these best practices. So we are going to be looking at aggregate data, including with our governance committee on a regular basis. That will include making sure that we are sort of guarding against any unanticipated consequences. Have we set a benchmark incorrectly, for example? Right now, we're getting about the right number that we anticipated of products not making it on the first time, as opposed to those sort of coming through the system. So that's how we're thinking about that. And with that, Doug, just to let everyone on the line know, we will be sending out an email to all of you. So that will have the sort of the developer kit. That will also have the link to go in, get your DiMe seal. We'll be providing a discount to all of you who joined us today out of recognition of the time you spent with us, your curiosity and your leadership. And then for those of you on the line who are adopters, we will be sending out that open letter, and we welcome your support and your leadership in signing that. Doug, this is always fun to do with you. I'm incredibly proud of what we're building here with the DiMe Seal. And thank you all of you on the line for taking some time with us today. It's always great to hear from the community. We've got some great suggestions. Look forward to working with you going forward. And for those of you who are developers, awarding you the DiMe Seal and celebrating your leadership. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you.